All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully, your favorite Chelsea podcast, meeting you somewhere in the moment of this holiday season where you've had a chance to relax a little bit after Chelsea won against one opponent, but not the other, as we projected in our preview pods here. But Sam, we're back. We're having a conversation. We're getting involved with the listeners, and we're trying to find the path forward that Chelsea might take to take all 6 points on offer away from Luton Town this season. Again, we beat them earlier in the season, but it is a much different side. And as we get into this match preview, we're going to have to go over how different they are. But before we do that, how are the holidays treating you? Are you finding joy outside of football at the moment?
Thank you so much, Dan. It's actually been a nice time for me personally, just to get away from where I usually am, go somewhere down south and experience actual winter. So I'm enjoying some family time and just de-stressing, detoxing. Unfortunately, cannot get away from football because the moment I do that, there's double the work catching up. And I enjoy it. So I don't want to be away from football, but yeah, good results certainly make that easier to do. So I'm hoping that we continue the good momentum that we have from the last game against Palace and push forward and get some very, very important points before the year ends.
It would be the last opportunity Pochettino meant have a chance to pick up points before the end of the year and wrap the calendar year fixture table a little bit better than the way it has gone over the first part, middle part, and some of the final part of the year. But we're going to talk about what Luton have been up to in the recent run of matches, any new injuries that they have had to their side, talk about maybe a few of the updates to their style of play because they are a different side than they were when we faced them earlier in the season, how Pochettino might go after them given what we saw against Crystal Palace, the players who are or are not available, and what some of our predictions might be from a lineup and score perspective. But before we do that, we just want to always say thank you to the wonderful people supporting the podcast. You can do so with 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Always appreciated. Always helps people find the podcast. And look, January is going to be busy with transfer news, so we're going to want to make sure that people can help find the podcast, and you can do that with those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can also let people know or subscribe yourself on YouTube and hit the bell icon to get notified when we drop a new video. Like those, leave comments. We always appreciate those well and do read them. And you can sign up for Sam's wonderful newsletter. The London is Blue Dispatch comes out every week. Great opportunity to get involved and increase that education with a little bit. I would say it's edutainment. It's educational entertainment that Sam puts out in that newsletter, and it's free, so you can sign up. Link in the description and in our show notes. And then you also join in our wonderful conversation with Discord community we got going on. A couple bucks a month, but helps support the podcast, so it's a nice little exchange we got on offer there. But that's it. We're going to jump into it. And look, Luton, not bottom of the Premier League, like many, maybe even some of us, thought they might be at the beginning part of this season. Their current record is 4-3-11, 15 points in total, 18th in the Premier League. Their home record 2-2-5 with 8 points, away record 2-1-6, 7 points. They have scored, probably more surprising, 21 goals, and their goals against are currently at 34. So the difference of negative 13, maybe not unsurprising, but I feel like I'm actually more surprised that they're getting over a goal a game in the Premier League with this promotion that they've had, with some of the injury issues that they've had as well. Sam, I think that is probably the most surprising thing to me, is that they have found a way to score. They found a way to earn points. It hasn't always been pretty. And you could actually argue that they maybe deserve more than they've earned so far. A couple of those losses or draws came at the very dying moments of some of those matches there. I mean, if we remember, Luton could have taken on Liverpool. They could have drawn with Man United. Like, there were some really tight results within here.
Yeah, I remember that we were supposed to record the Luton pod on the same day as the Crystal Palace pod, and I'm glad that I was pushed back because The season's sort of taken a turn, like a massive, massive turn. After like when we talked last time on the pod, it's been an emotional journey for them. Yeah, it's been an emotional journey for them in terms of we all know what happened to Tom Lockyer. He basically collapsed on the pitch during the game against Bournemouth, and the game had to be postponed. And what was extremely worrying was that it was the second time that it happened after he collapsed in the playoff final back in May. So he had a cardiac arrest there, and there's a lovely, lovely article by The Athletic by Jacob Whitehead, um, who wrote about 7 days and then just after 2 minutes of the entire emotional journey that was there in terms of how Luton was as a club, and how it galvanized them after a truly difficult time processing that their captain had gone off. And you know obviously you see it once, but if it happens twice, then you fear the worst. And the article talks about just how much of resilience had to be taken into account. Individual players were basically given, counseling. Mental health professionals were got in because it's such a traumatic thing to see on a football field. But they've used that energy, and they've used the nature of their captain, and what a character he is in terms of just taking all of that and channeling it into positive performances. And when we talked last, they had zero clean sheets, and the next game against Newcastle, they managed their first one. And then after Sheffield United, they came back from 2-1 down and won 3-2. So, they've picked up as many wins in the last two games as they had in, the entire season combined before it. So it just looks like they're on the up, and they look motivated, they look inspired. So going to be a tough game, like you mentioned. When we faced them earlier in the season, can be overwhelming when a club like that comes up to the Premier League and gets a taste of the big time, and they realized, wow, that's the jump between the Championship and the Premier League. They came to us at Stamford Bridge with a 5-3-2, extremely defensive. Went with two target men up top, tried to create damage, but nothing worked. And it's been vastly different, teams for both squads right now. It's in terms of injuries, in terms of how both teams have now bifurcated and gone and found their best 11. So it'll be interesting to see how we match up now this time. And yeah, to just add to it, I think it's not going to be an easy game. A lot of people think, oh wow, 18th in the table, going to take 3 points, but I genuinely think this is going to be a tough, tough game, far tougher than people envision.
Well, something that people always enjoy hearing is that the match is going to be more difficult than we would look at. I think what's maybe interesting is a couple of these results too, in terms of the ability to punch up. And I mean, I know the joke is that we broke Newcastle given how their form has been, but they did beat Newcastle 1-0. If they did not gift, I mean, they did get gifts in the Sheffield United match, but they won that pretty, I would say, without too much fuss. And then, Man City struggled with them, beating them only 2-1. So I do think that they are capable of going the distance. They're capable of at least not going down without a fight, I think would be the fair way to frame it, Sam, is that ultimately they are probably more likely than others, given the squad makeup that they have, to potentially get relegated at the end of the season. But they're at least scrappy enough that if they were to stay up, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if they could wrestle out of the group that they're in. I don't know if they would overtake Nottingham Forest, but Everton have obviously pushed up and could be higher if their points deduction gets removed. I mean, I don't know who maybe would fall down. They're in a tricky spot, I think, but they're at least looking competitive in the way that they're playing.
You definitely need a catalyst when you're in a relegation dogfight, and Everton went there, but the moment their form was patchy to say the least. But the moment they got that deduction, they went on this run of just smacking Newcastle, and you could tell that that was the galvanizing factor that they required. And when you look at Luton, I think with the Tom Lockyer situation, and not just that, but in terms of maybe just understanding that they can go up against the big boys and not take a beating. They've had performances where I think they can look back at it and say, this was an incredible performance. So against the big boys, against Luton, against Liverpool at home, they drew 1-1. Newcastle, they managed to beat. Arsenal were extremely lucky to come away with 3 points. They were down, and they got an equalizer and then the winner in stoppage time. So that, and then like you mentioned, Man City only escaped with a 2-1 win. So it's a tough place to go, and it's a side that wants to fight, and they've got stability. They've got a manager who's got them up with an identity which has largely remained the same from the championship. So that helps too. There's I think a stable base, and as and when they get used to the Premier League and its challenges and how to approach team, I think anything can happen. I think they're at a position where they can make a push in the second half of the season and actually get away from it. You look at Nottingham Forest, managers changed, a lot of things going wrong, so you never know who's going to go down. So it does look like they have the ingredients required to pull through. So let's not hope that we can contribute to that cause, and hope that they get them from somewhere else.
Yes, the gift giving season from Chelsea is hopefully over in the same way that it is within the calendar year. So let's hope that we are very much out of our gift giving ways in this match. But we're going to take our very first break, and then when we get back, we're going to talk all about how their style of play has continued to evolve. So stay tuned, we'll be right back.
All right, Chess fans, we're back with another partnership through the end of the year. We got NordVPN coming at you to make sure you are safe and you're able to watch Chelsea no matter where you are traveling during the holiday season. A lot of you know I just got back from Costa Rica from Thanksgiving with the family, and guess what? I used a VPN to watch Chelsea while I was traveling. I was able to watch it on Peacock, no problems at all. So if you're traveling out of the country this holiday season, make sure to get NordVPN so you don't miss when we play Wolves on the 24th, when we play again after Boxing Day, and again before the end of the year. There are tons of matches coming up. You don't want to miss a single one. The other thing to think about, are you want to watch match of the day? Are you trying to see the BBC coverage, Sky coverage? You can do it with over 5,000 servers from NordVPN. So if you go to nordvpn.com/London is blue, you're going to go ahead and pick the plan that's right for you. And we're going to give you 4 extra months for being a fan of London is Blue. That's right. You get an extra 4 months hanging out with us. We absolutely appreciate you checking them out. Now, if you aren't using a VPN, hey, I hate to break it to you, you're the only one. Not only do they keep you secure and all your information is encrypted, no more IP address tracking. The other thing is they've doubled down and they've added threat protection feature. So say goodbye to intrusive website ads, malware. Even if you download an infected file, threat protection kicks in and deletes it before it makes a mess of your computer. Go to nordvpn.com/London is blue. Try it. Huge holiday deal. There's no risk. You get a 30-day money-back guarantee with NordVPN. That's how much they believe in the product. Support our sponsor, nordvpn.com/London is blue. Go watch match today. Go watch Chelsea if you're traveling. Never going to have to worry about being tracked on the internet again. Link in the description. You know what to do.
All right, Sam. So the crossing champions, Luton, are back, and we are going to be going up against them. I mean, they definitely have alternated a little, but I think some of the areas where we're going to be concerned is the set pieces, the dead ball opportunity, the crosses into the box against a defense that is only recently, aka one game, shown a half where we felt maybe very good about our ability to block and shut things down. So where are Luton looking to hurt us, and how are their style of play do that?
Like I mentioned earlier on in the preview, I think they've started off with a certain vision in mind and they've had to improvise and settle on something else. So when they came up against us, they have 2 target men, and both of them tend to do very well when they're scoring. So just wanted to put both of them up top in various systems. So they tried a 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2, and they tried a 4-4-2 to get both those guys in. And like you mentioned, crossing champions. So they had good wide men and good fullbacks who were able to get into crossing positions and just relentlessly deliver into the box. So that was how they started, but they realized that they couldn't afford to get 2 centre forwards up front. They needed a little bit of industry in midfield. They needed to be more solid because it was just too easy to play through them. So they had to add an extra midfielder, and they've gone basically from 4-4-2 or 3-5-2 to a 3-4-3, and that's been, I think, their transformative change, where it's now become their default blueprint. They play the 3-4-3, and it's, I would say, more of a 3-4-2-1. So the wingers are actually what Tuchel calls half wingers. They're just behind the center forward, so they're very narrow. They're in the half spaces. So what their play style is essentially, it's very functional, it's very efficient, I would say. They've got the second highest crosses in the Premier League this season. And when you look at their forwards, like I mentioned, so Clinton Morris and Elijah Adebayo, both of them very good at knocking down. Adebayo has been extremely impressive for me. He's, I think, 192 centimeters tall, and for a guy that size, he's got good feet. He's able to knock down second balls and bring other people into play. He's a nuisance inside the box. So the idea is to just try and get him as much service as possible. And Luton are second for key passes from crosses and corners after Liverpool, which is quite a surprising statistic. The game plan is just that: try to find your center forward, in those positions. But I think somewhere down the line, they realized that two forwards was proving a bit too much, and they wanted to add an extra body behind them. So they actually went to a 3-4-3. And the 3-4-3 is not with two wingers, but what Tuchel calls the half wingers, which is two attacking midfielders narrow behind the centre forward. And what Luton do is they just try to go direct to Adebayo, who's a very impressive. I would say I've watched him play quite a lot and I've enjoyed watching him. He's 192 centimeters, I think. And for a big man, he's got nimble feet. He's able to knock down second balls. He's able to bring players behind him into play and basically link up. Quite a risky strategy to execute in the Premier League. So he does it very well. He's a nuisance in the box as well. So um, they've basically got a fetish for just crossing as much as possible or going long with direct balls. So that's going to be the game plan. Even if you look at their goalkeeper, manages to launch the most amount of goal kicks and most amount of passes compared to any other goalkeeper in the Premier League. So it's all about just going quick, going long, not playing around, and then just being functional, being essential. The wing backs, I would say, are their creative threats. So Alfie Doughty is the wing back who's got the more attacking role. He's mostly played on the left in the championship, but on times in the Premier League, he's also played on the right hand side. He's the leading assist provider with three, and he also opened his scoring account in the last game, where he managed to nutmeg the goalkeeper after dribbling into the box. So he's opened his account. On the other flank, they've used a couple of other options. So, I mean, Doughty's played on the right, Kabore has played on the right, and he's a strong off the ball runner and also tied for the most big chances created for Luton with four. And just to give you a picture of how essential the wing backs are, so Kabore and Doughty together have sort of created seven big chances, which is 1/4 of their entire team's total. And I think what's sort of interesting about them is that the wingers or the attacking midfielders and the wing backs interchange very fluently. So you will often see the wing back come narrow and become an attacker, and you'll see Townsend, maybe drift wide. You'll see Jacob Brown on the other flank drift wide and let Giles come in. But it usually happens on the right hand side because it's more fluid there. So that's something that tends to be good for them because it confuses the opposition fullback. And I think that's where the biggest threat is going to come. So if we have to deal with it, it's basically trying to stop Alfie Doughty and figure out how to cut off the supply line to Adebayo when we basically go on Townsend. How to stop him from crossing, from dribbling into the box. That's going to be the main issue for us to solve. In possession, game is very straightforward. They've, like I mentioned, very direct, try to be aggressive. But in terms of balance in midfield, They've got one midfielder who pushes up, who's got more attacking responsibilities, which is Ross Barkley. I should add he's in very good form. He looks every bit the player that we tried to buy from Everton. um, I saw his game against Sheffield United, and he was ridiculous. He was, I think he could have had a hat trick if he wanted to. He smacked the post from about 30 yards out with an absolutely beautiful shot. He had one more which fizzed narrowly wide, so he's taking shots from distance. He's pulling off through balls with the outside of his foot and finding people running in behind. So he's going to be the more dangerous of the central midfielders. The other CM is basically somebody who screens the back three and provides them protection and rest defense. That one's Mpanzu, or you've got Lokonga and Nakamba, but Nakamba is out with an injury long term, so he's not going to feature. Lokonga played last game and did very well against Sheffield United, so I expect him to start against us. But it's basically trying to make sure that they have enough bodies in attack, and one of those bodies comes from Ross Barkley making late runs into the box, which he really likes. They're also very aggressive, you know, all across the pitch. I think they, I wouldn't say it's fair to say that they press, it's more like they chase. So a lot of the times you'll see Adebayo run after somebody while none of the other guys are backing him up, and he just runs for the sake of it. And sometimes it just comes off as bizarre because you're used to seeing well coordinated presses in the Premier League, but Luton just like to run behind you. It's like a pack of hounds finding something, and there's no coordination. It's just industry and just purpose. That's about it. So you'll often see them running and trying to close you down, and sometimes that can work in their favor. Sometimes it can go against them. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Andros Townsend, one of those wingers enjoying a good season. He's also developed his weaker foot shot from distance, so that's something to watch when he comes on his right side. 1-1-2, definitely keep an eye on. But that's essentially the game plan. And out of possession, they will go 5-2-3. And even if they think they want to go more defensive, then 5-4-1 or even 6-3-1, like they did against Manchester City. If I talk about the City game in particular, very organized, very stubborn, and they trouble the big guys. They trouble them with good organization, with fighting for each other, making sure that they're denying any kind of space. They've got three centre backs. Obviously, if you try to put something in the box, it's going to be a little tough to figure out how to get in and then penetrate them very effectively. So that's the issue. I think it's a side that is aggressive with players who want to win the ball, who are very good and very direct. And yeah, the threat could come from anywhere. It's just, to be kind, I would say that it's an interesting outfit to come up against. But yeah, a winnable game. But they've also got a good home record against a big side, so that's also a hindering factor. So I look at this game, I look at our form, and I think we should be winning 100%. But yeah, like you mentioned at the beginning of this preview, that one of their top things is that they're strong on set pieces, and everybody knows how bad we are. So just to give you an idea, almost half of their goals have come from set pieces. So open play, they've got 11 goals, and from corners and free kicks, they've got 8. So it'll be an interesting time when we concede those corners and to see how we deal with them. But it only takes one for us to be under pressure. So I think it's going to be an interesting game then. Hopefully we improve our set piece game and keep that clean sheet, that elusive clean sheet.
Well, that would be ideal if we could make that happen. I think what we want to make sure people are aware of, though, is that they are not necessarily a perfect side, and I think that there are ways that we can take advantage of them. I do think that we've seen them struggle to keep clean sheets. We've seen them struggle with the depth of the squad, which means that they seemingly tend to run out of gas or are running on fumes later into the match. Now, we also have a very depleted side, so maybe we can't take full advantage or exploit that entirely, but it does feel like there are ways to get at this Luton side, and maybe a little differently than how we had to get at them or were able to get at them in our last match.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are some important points that you've raised. In terms of exploiting them, I think there are a lot of ways. Otherwise, you wouldn't be where you are in the table. So obviously, the team, when you look at their goals scored, they're tied for the second fewest goals scored, and they're also tied second for the shots attempted. So, in terms of attacking output, not good. They've also got the third worst big chances created with just 27. And they've beaten their opponents on expected goals only 4 times. Although I should add that against Newcastle, they managed to tie with 1.4 for each. But like you mentioned, up until that Newcastle game, they were only one of two sides to not have a single clean sheet. So Brighton was the other one, surprisingly. But now they have that clean sheet, and it's come at an inopportune time. So they will be confident, and hopefully not for too long. And the team are also third in terms of average distance from where they allow shots, which is around 15.7 yards. So, they allow dangerous shots. And the second worst with 17 shots conceded per 90, which is an incredibly high number. I should also add that teams average 1.95 non-penalty expected goals against them, which is the highest in the Premier League. So they do offer you a lot of shots, and they do offer you a lot of dangerous shots, which is, a recipe for disaster. One thing that's stuck out for me when I've been watching their games is their quality of box defending. I think it's been very poor, and it's probably the one primary factor why they concede so many goals. They don't communicate. I think the back three, Bell, can be exploited. I don't think the three guys behind talk to each other. Osho, for example, is supposed to be, the organizer as the central center back, but a lot of the times when they get into situations like, for example, attacking transitions, when they lose the ball in their own half, the decision making can be clumsy. It looks like three different guys playing three different games rather than one defensive unit responding to a crisis. And that's been very noteworthy on multiple occasions. People freezing up, not checking who's marking who, in bad clearances, bad attempts to get to the second ball, um, just lapses of concentration. I think that's the biggest issue. So I think we should definitely be trying to challenge that as much as possible. I would also say, like I mentioned in the earlier part, that aggression can be counterintuitive. So they try to close you down. They will push. I also mentioned that the central midfielder, the more attacking central midfielder, you'll also see Barkley trying to get stuck in, and he likes that. He likes that part of the game where he wants to get into tackles and win the ball back. But that can leave the rest of the team a little disjointed because their wing backs are also high up the pitch. They like pushing up. So that leaves them with like three centre backs and the other midfielder with Barkley trying to protect against defensive transitions. And I think that's where they're the most vulnerable. Even just the balance or the synergy between those two central midfielders, despite it being a back three, it's just bad for distances. It's bad for pressing. It's bad for recovery. A lot of the times, you'll see both midfielders on the same line. So that's tactical harakiri, and it can the one pass basically gets you from your own box to running at their back three in no time at all. So that's something that we should definitely be looking at. We're good at transitions, and there will be opportunities to hit them on the break very quickly. I think that's something that we should keep an eye on. And I think the last thing that I would say is, like you mentioned, maybe this is owing to the fact that they've used the least amount of players, I think, in the Premier League, tied with 23. And just the fact that they run a lot and run at high distances a lot because they're pressing, chasing, and they're also doing transitions and running down the flanks, off the ball runs. A lot of that industry wears them out and takes a lot out of the gas tank. So 27 of their 34 goals this season have come in the second half. 27 of the 34 goals conceded have come in the second half. And I should also add that they've only had a 2 goal lead once all season, and that was against Everton. So even if you go 1-0 down, it's not the end of the world. There's every chance that you get your opportunity to equalize and then go one ahead. So second half is where I think the damage can be done, but you don't want to wait that long. I think somebody in the last game on comms said that we're the only team in the Premier League that hasn't gone 1-0 down at the break, which is, I think, a surprisingly good, piece of information for us in a dire season. So, yeah, hopefully we can get a goal in the first half and quickly do the damage in the second and get a few goals to make all our scorers happy, especially Christopher and Cuckoo.
That would be music to everyone's ears. And look, we would love to start seeing some balloon goal celebrations, but we're going to talk about how Pochettino is going to try and get this result across the line and end 2023 better than it started for Chelsea. So we're going to take our last break. When we get back, we're going to get into all of that. So stay tuned. All right, Sam. So coming out of the break, the biggest thing that Pochettino is going to have to continue to deal with, two things. One, players not being available, whether that's due to fitness, whether that's due to injury, whether that's due to suspension. Thankfully, no new ones from the last game. He has never had the complement of players that he would like to give us the ultimate starting 11, or the one that maybe we were salivating over when we were looking at how this side could come together in preseason. And number two, the fact that Luton have way more rested players, 2 extra days of rest before they were taking advantage of heading into this match. Now, we did get some forced rest with a couple of the suspensions that we did have, so maybe we do have some players that are better rested for this game, but in general, we are a side who is potentially going to look a little lethargic heading into this match, where Luton likely will be just absolutely firing out of the gate. So think those are probably the 2 major ones, but what else are you thinking that that Pochettino might be considering in this match?
You're spot on. I think the 2 extra days for Luton make all the difference. We were in the same position against Palace. I think they had extra days of rest over us in the previous fixture, and luckily we managed to compete very well. But the one bright spot for us was getting the third central midfielder back in Romeo Lavia, but he's unfortunately picked up a thigh issue. We don't know how serious it is. We will probably come to know perhaps tomorrow when Poch does his presser. But losing that rotation option, I think, is a big hit, because you cannot rest Gallagher, you cannot rest Caicedo, just for the simple reason that you can't go with one midfield pivot, with nobody able to support those options. So it's a big dilemma, and you don't want to run the risk of Caicedo just coming back from illness and him having to play at short notice after a period of recovery. And the same with Gallagher, who's played extended minutes because he's captain, because he's been trusted in the absence of James and Chilwell, and obviously he's played a lot of minutes. So I think the one that he missed was because of suspension. And the rest, we've tried to play him as much as possible. So I'm not ideal in that midfield department. And I think Luton will enjoy a little bit of a physical advantage when we come up against them. And it suits their style of play. So hopefully we can be clever. I have been looking at, maybe like a slight change of optics from Poch, where we are in the last 5 games. Our possession stats have gone 71, 78, 78, 65 or 68. And we've basically kept more of the ball. And when you're able to do that, then you're able to conserve a lot more energy. You're able to exert a lot more control. So hopefully we continue that, be smart in the way that we are able to use our gas tank, and then go into the new year a little fresh and hoping to proceed in another cup competition. I think that's very, very important. And the second, like you said, is, I think, a nice headache for Poch to have after a long time where he just didn't know, or he just didn't know which attackers he should be picking, because he didn't have any other options. There were just Mudryk and Sterling and Palmer. Those are the 3 options available to him. And he had the unfortunate decision to make about whether to play Gallagher or Enzo Fernandez at number 10. Now that you've got Mudryk, Nkunku, Madueke, Sterling, and Palmer competing for maybe 2 or 3 slots, I think it's an excellent header to have, excellent debate to have for him with his coaching staff. Sterling and Palmer, I think, come in purely because they've had a rest. Misha had a very good game against Palace, so I think there's an interesting dilemma there. Like, do you start Mudryk or do you start Madueke, who, by virtue of earning us the 3 points, may have deserved a start? But then who do you bench?
Oh, that is a tough question, and maybe the one that we should be digging into here. So as we think about that attack, we've seen now that Pochettino is maybe trying to get 4 attackers on the pitch, particularly against these sides who, if you look at Palace, you look at Wolves, maybe we're going to attempt a little bit more of that low block, be a little bit more compact. Is that the thought that you think he'll continue with that, and where he will persevere with Nico Jackson? I think maybe getting some undue criticism for, unfortunately, the TikTok inspection of his performance, when it is a very micro view of the individual misses that look very bad, to be fair to those who would criticize him, but on overall is still a developmental striker in every sense of the word, and has done some good, but maybe is getting full marks or trying to be, getting a full term grade on half term work. And that's never going to be good for anyone, especially a new to the Premier League striker. And then some combination of, I would imagine, the rested Cole Palmer and Nkunku likely getting some more minutes. Maybe he gets 30 minutes and is replacing someone else, and Madueke, who had a bright cameo, gets an opportunity to start, and maybe Mudryk gets some rest with Sterling coming in, even though people won't necessarily love that after the recent Sterling performance. It does feel like there's going to be some rotation. I don't think Poch is necessarily trying to make us happy with his lineup. He's just trying to make us happy with the results. He's also trying to make his players happy so that they get some rest as well. What's your thought on what configuration he might go with, taking all things into consideration, Sam?
I think he played his cards. He got the same attacking 4 that he had in the preseason game against Newcastle. So it was nice to have a little bit of familiarity there. And I think the first 45 minutes justified the faith that he had. We looked very good. We managed to create 4 big chances and we fluffed 3 of them, which is very on brand for Chelsea. But like you mentioned, I think right now his priority is to try and make sure that none of the guys that we have get injured. So by virtue of that, I think he's just going to manage the guys who figured out more than 70, 75 minutes in the Palace game to come off the bench, or maybe not have more than 60 minutes from the start. And I think the configuration he goes with is Sterling on the left, Palmer maybe down the middle, and then on the right hand side you have Madueke. I think that's what he does. Again, it's not something that makes us happy, but it does make the squad happy. Um, Mudryk probably won't enjoy being out, but he also went off with holding his ankle after a very bad challenge from I don't know who it was in the Palace midfield. Was it Lerma? But he was on the touchline holding his ankle, and maybe Poch is just thinking, let's give them a couple of extra days. Let's hope that they come on for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, make sure that their body's just got the rhythm, but don't have to come on in an intense game state where we're chasing a goal and, where they're overexerting. So I think Nkunku, Mudryk come off the bench, and we have room for hungry players to go at Luton. I think that's what the thinking could be. I might necessarily not be right here, but in terms of how well Poch has treated his players coming back from injury, in terms of how he's rotated when he's had the players, I think this is the lineup that he could go with. I would love to know your thoughts on this as well.
Oh, I think I'm right there with you. I think my consideration is shifting towards the back as well with some of the rotations. So if we take that attacking, the 4 musketeers rather in our attack, and then we kind of move back and start looking at the rest of the lineup, I do think with Enzo being out it will continue to be a Gallagher and Caicedo show as much as maybe they would like some rest. I mean, we now have Cole Gallagher up with Thiago Silva as the two most minutes contributed in this Premier League season for Chelsea, which I don't know if that was necessarily in anyone's consideration when we talked about the fact that, we've brought in Caicedo, we brought in Lavia, we brought in Enzo earlier, and so now we have a midfield trio that we're going to continue to rely upon. But Conor Gallagher said, "Nope, not my issue. I'm going to make sure that I am there to absorb all of the minutes." But I think it is the back four that may be most interesting. I do think Malo Gusto gets another opportunity to play after looking extremely impressive. I would imagine that Thiago Silva starts after getting the sub in, along with, I'm going to guess, Disasi. And it feels weird, but maybe it's Levi Colwill again, who didn't necessarily have the best game and is still kind of playing out of position. But I feel like Badiashile would be the one that might get the rest here after a couple of individual gaffes that have either contributed to a goal by itself or have been a part of the comedy of errors that usually leads up to a Chelsea goal. But that is my assumption on what we might see rolled out for a defensive line.
Yeah, I have some interesting thoughts here because in the game against Palace, we all know that Olise was having the most amount of influence. So what Poch did in the second half was move Gusto to the left hand side and basically left Disasi to take care of whoever was on the left hand side. So I think when you look at their more dangerous side, it is the right side. And if you don't want to leave Colville against, somebody like Olise, and in this case against somebody like an Alfie Doughty and Andros Townsend, I don't know if the solution would be what he does with Kukureya and put him at right back and basically move Gusto to left back, play Disasi on the right hand side and go two centre backs. Like you said, Silva was rested, so there's every opportunity that he comes in. And maybe this is the first time that Levi actually gets to play as a left centre back, a pure left centre back. And like you mentioned, Badiashile has not had the best of games after he gifted that goal to Callum Wilson. So maybe the right time to take him away from the firing line. So it lines up for me. I wouldn't be surprised to see Gusto start at left back. And again, I fear for him because he's come back from an injury, but we simply don't have any other fullback. So
Yeah.
I don't see how else we basically fix that. I am also worried about central midfield. I'm extremely worried about Gallagher. He's got a third lung. He's basically Kante's shadow at this point. Caicedo is also great, but again, just coming back from illness. And obviously, I worry about Jackson and Breuer. I don't think Breuer has been good enough, but I will also give him that amount of grace because he's come back from an extremely tough injury, and it's never easy to recover from it. So but like we haven't been able to rotate Jackson out as much as we'd like with the second option, and not that Jackson's deserved that kind of a rest. I think at this point in time, Poch is just saying, "I'm going to keep you on for as long as possible. Hope you get double-digit goals as many as possible, and prove the fan base that you can be the starting forward come next season." So I think those are little worries, but I think the defense might shift a little bit to factor for the threat that Luton provide.
Well, and we are going to get a bit of a break between this game and the next one for the first time in a long time because it's going from the Luton match on December 30th, and then the next match takes place in the calendar year 2024 on Saturday, January 6th, when Chelsea will take on Preston. And then we've got matches, a little tight bit of matches there before a break, the winter break for the Premier League. the Middlesbrough match in the League Cup semifinal, and then our Fulham match. And we know that we will lose Nico Jackson to AFCON in January as well, as he plays for Senegal, and they are the presumptive favorites in that tournament. But you never know; he might have a early exit and return to us sooner rather than at the very end of the tournament. But you would imagine that with the view that there will be a week between this match and the next one, that Pochettino will be asking his players who are able to commit to playing and being involved in this match, if they can give just a little extra to try to grind out a result, that this would be the match to try to do it in, particularly as Chelsea would like to and could go ninth if things fall their way and actually be truly in the top half of the table and not in the smack dab middle of it, Sam. And I think they're going to maybe want, from a pride perspective, I feel like some of the players would want that as well. It is a kind of bit of a badge of honor in terms of how we'd like to end this year.
I think it's just, our fortune that we had a fixture list going Preston North End, Middlesbrough, Fulham, Middlesbrough, and Jackson is probably not there for any of those games when you wanted him to, just add to his goal tally, maybe get to 15. And from there he could get those bragging rights saying, look, I've got the sensational goal tally that everyone wanted me to have. But I think, like you mentioned, if there's one game that you need to push for and get past it, I think it's this one. Then you have well spaced out games where Poch can maybe do a little bit of work behind the scenes and figure out what he wants to do with Nkunku coming back, hopefully Lavia coming back. We'll have,
Sure.
hopefully, I'm guessing Trev Chalobah, either West Fofana, Ben Chilwell's also on the grass, but obviously will take a little longer. But if those 3 to 4 players come back and we have 2 more starters back to start, I think it could be massive for the second half of the season. So Poch has to be smart. He has to manage minutes. He has to manage fatigue and hope that, the injury crisis just doesn't become a rolling thing. Try to avoid what you can and punish them in the way that we know we can punish them. I think the game plan here is simple, Dan. I don't want to go into tactics and stuff and say this formation, that formation. Block out the wide guys, make sure that they don't get any service, try to make sure that they don't get opportunities to cross from wide, make sure that you have some kind of a plan to cut out any supply to Adebayo and basically mop up any second balls that he tries to create. And you've blunted most of their threat. If you take care of the wing backs, their creativity is gone. If you take care of the striker, most of their goals are gone. And when you are in that position, you can hurt them. You can cause a lot of damage to their backline. But you have to take care of the threat first.
Well, with all of that said, what do we think? Will Chelsea, will Pochettino, will the players be able to put a smile on our faces before the end of the year? Will it be a win, a draw, or a loss?
Ooh, this is a tough one. Okay. The optimist in me, because it's the year's ending and I'm feeling good. And I think, having seen enough of Luton's games, I think it could be 2-0 for us. I think. But I also think it could easily be 1-1, just going by how good they've been at home. So, heart says 2-0, but head says 1-1. Now, what about you?
Oh, I think it's likely the 2-1 type of scenario where we are able to manufacture our win, we are able to get it done, but Luton continue to be the pesky gnat that they are and absolutely are annoying to no end. So, yeah, I don't think this will necessarily be the calmest way to spend your Saturday, but hopefully at the end of it, we are all very happy with Chelsea's end of the year form rounding into it. Fit players coming back to full fitness, Pochettino getting his men to perform exactly as he's hoping, and as Blues enjoying maybe an opportunity to laugh at other teams, because right now it's very hard to cast any aspersions elsewhere because we have our own problems to solve. But that's going to do it for this one. Love to hear your thoughts, your comments. leave them in the comments on YouTube, hit us up on social, join our wonderful community Discord and get involved in the conversation there. But that is going to do it for this. It's the last preview that we're doing for this year, Sam. We've got plenty more heading into January for matches and both player previews as well. We're going to be taking a look at some of the players that Chelsea might be considering when it comes to the market to reinforce the side, to potentially claw our way up into a European spot or to push us over the line in one of our cup competitions. But I have enjoyed doing these previews with you immensely this year. It's been so great to have you as a part of our London is Blue family, and I'm looking forward to a very wonderful and even better 2024.
Thank you and the rest of the Londoners Blue family for just welcoming me with open arms. We started off with scouting pods and we are doing previews now. So, whatever we tend to do and get our hands in whichever pie, everybody's been extremely generous with their time. And the amount of feedback, I receive, the warmth, the encouragement is unparalleled. So I consider myself extremely fortunate to be here with you guys, and I hope that I can keep doing justice and add more value, and hopefully the next year, I can keep on improving. So fingers crossed, and wishing all of you the absolute best of what life has to provide. I know the holidays can be tough for a lot of people, so my love to all of you, and if there's anything, you can always reach out to any of us, and we'll always be here for you. So take care and all the love and light.
That is such a fine way to end it. And from Sam, from myself, from everyone else involved in our wonderful London is Blue community, from our guests to our hosts to our behind the scenes individuals who help get this out. This is the very last episode of 2023. We will be back on January 1st with a match review of the Luton match where we are hopefully celebrating a Chelsea win. But that's going to do it for this episode. So until next time, stay safe, stay well, stay ultra safe on New Year's Eve. If you are getting into any festivities, hopefully you enjoy your time with friends, family, and loved one. But until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.